urban hygiene is an issue where people aren't very clean. They're not cleaning up their properties, and or landlords aren't taking care of their rentals. And in some of these areas, there's not been any exclusion work. Harborage is rampant. There's food sources people don't understand, pet food,
readily available,
pet waste, those things. People, of course, in the pandemic, which will be a subject we'll talk about more, but people are cooking from home more and they're eating out less. That's a lot more food and food wastes coming from these properties, as well as pets. And so all of that, with the closure of restaurants, has really led to an explosion in local public service calls for rats.
And that's what we've seen. With our this last year, typically our rodent calls start with November-ish as it starts to get a little cooler. Calls start to increase December through March. It really is our kind of peak rodent season. But what we found, and this is actually the what started all this, is that we're participating in a project that's being studied on the relation, if there is some, which we'll talk about in a little bit, the relationship of COVID and rodents, and can it be passed through in the wild, right? Like using wild rodents, wild rats that are trapped, and analyzing them to see if they have COVID, right?
That's the research question.
And that's what we're going to get to, the whole purpose of this, and kind of get to later. But we noticed, as we were preparing for rodent calls to kind of die down this last year during the beginning of the pandemic, typically rodents die down and our termite swarm calls go up, and it just kind of goes hand in hand. Almost works out perfect every year. This year, our rodent calls never dropped, even during the heat, of the summer, when you would typically think that all of our rodents are pretty much burrowing and living outside. They're not coming in for warmth, that sort of thing. It just never happened, and so this research will be interesting to see. A lot of different things, not just are they vectors of COVID, but also just behavior is what I'm thinking also that can come from this research as well that you guys are doing.
That's right. I mean, rats are primarily nocturnal until there's so many animals in a population that once they're seen in the daytime, the population's too high already, right? So, but typically rats are nocturnal, and they're uniform in appearance, so people aren't really aware. They don't really understand if they're seeing the same rat over and over, if they're seeing 10 rats or 15 rats.
What gets me is that a lot of times customers will call saying, hey, listen, I'm hearing something scratching going on in the attic. So we'll go out, and they said, oh, you know what? I caught it. Because they trapped one.
Oh, right.
Right, so I've got it. So, no need to, no need for you guys, because look at me, I did it.
Right.
But that we have to help them explain that there's never a rat. I mean,
rats have a prolific reproductive rate.
Right.
And if you have two, you might as well have 20,000 if you have sufficient resources for them to feed on. Because what is it? In 6 weeks, it takes a pair of rats to propagate with 8 offspring, and then it takes them. They can become sexually mature in just another few weeks. And if you look at the numbers, it's this.
It's incredible. The more I study, and I don't have a PhD, after my name, but just from our experience and just seeing, the more I'm convinced. We always hear about roaches, that they'll be here through nuclear whatever, and they'll survive everything. I'm convinced it's roaches and rats is what I'm convinced to be the ultimate survivors, because it's incredible.
Well, our colleague and mentor Bobby Corrigan, as he often says, my money is on the rats.
right.
And that's where my money is.
Right.
Yeah.